Starting. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Talking About Saul with Dancing Sean. We're going to be going over episode 9 of season 6. We've been doing this every week. If you don't know who Sean Pink is, Sean has a website on YouTube, Dancing Sean. Do you want to say anything really fast?
Mr. Westeros. I do a podcast with
Yes, Aziz.
other people that cover Game of Thrones and that whole world, all those books, and a new show coming up and everything. And I have my own YouTube channel, Dancing Sean. Follow me on uh, Twitter or YouTube, and I'm on Reddit now. I love to talk about all the everything you learned in high school about how to analyze, all your book reports. I do that for movies and TV.
Yes. It's a lot of work, which I mean, it pays off. It feels great when you like put it together, and yeah. But yeah, if you didn't know, there is a new, side note, Game of Thrones series, House of Dragons, that are coming out. What, September? Am I right on that?
It is the week after Better Call Saul ends, and I'm
Okay.
scared I don't remember the exact date.
Yeah, but it's coming up real soon.
September, though.
Yeah. And so he's going to be analyzing that. With Aziz, they do a podcast, a very in-depth podcast. They'll go over each of the episodes, maybe compare it to the books. There's a book that's about the Dances of Dragons as the event, which is talked about in Game of Thrones a little bit. But yeah, they just dive into that. It's really fun. But we're here for Better Call Saul.
I also put a video up on YouTube about Better Call Saul. I did like an hour-long analysis of how they use color in Better Call Saul, and we're certainly going to touch on it here and there as we talk about this episode. It's a integral, meaningful, pervasive part of how they present Better Call Saul is through the use of color.
Yes.
So if you want a detailed explanation, I went pretty deep, and I think just knowing about it a little bit, every episode you watch, if you go back and rewatch an episode, like, oh, whoa, you like to start to see new things, like not just like seeing, I don't know how much they're using. You like realize, oh, that's why Nacho had a red car or whatever, but also the meaning that it has, not just that they were doing it, but how it adds meaning to things. Sometimes it could be foreshadow or even spoilery to what's coming up. So
yeah. This episode is called Fun and Games, which it seems like there's been a lot of fun and games going on with Jimmy and Kim. Obviously, there's a lot more.
Usually that quote is, "It's all fun and games till someone gets hurt."
Exactly,
so,
which also has happened. But do you have anything else before we dive into the episode?
I actually did a couple things we've talked about in the past that I've learned more about since I wanted to bring up. You asked one time about the meaning behind the opening credits, right? The theme music and
Yes.
just the
Yes.
reel that plays while they're showing like the directed by and all that kind of stuff at the
Yes.
beginning. And if you think about it, and it's hard to know this automatically, but I think I even mentioned that I had seen someone do this. I watched the actual video. I had seen the clip, but I hadn't watched the whole analysis. But now I have watched the whole analysis. I think it's a guy named Ological. Probably more than one person out there has realized this or talked about this. But anyway, they did like a side by side, like all the intros from all the seasons.
Yeah.
And played them all at once. And when you do that, the little differences are much more clear.
That makes sense.
And the main difference is that it degrades throughout the seasons. If you think about what you're watching, it's almost like an old VCR tape, right? That's sort of the quality that's being presented.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, sometimes when you're watching it, kind of like an old VCR tape, you see maybe it kind of flickers or gets a little distorted, or even some of the color fades out, especially with an old VCR tape. If you record over it and then record over it and record, like if you're just like recording a TV show and every week you record, use that same tape to record over, slowly the tape gets to be worse and worse quality.
Or it bleeds out through.
What's that?
Or it bleeds through, like you may see another.
Exactly. And sometimes you see that in the intro. Sometimes you see images bleed through the main things being. You still see this kind of shadow image behind. And so, one, that's something that they're doing is interesting to realize. And then there's some other sort of, like, I don't know, meanings behind that. One is as the show progresses, in a long term, we know we're going to hit Gene eventually, who's being presented in black and white, no color at all. So kind of
Right,
like
right.
the VCR tape is degrading to the point it's going to lose all its color as we get toward Gene. That's like a way to look at it, I guess. Another way is how Saul he reinvents himself, right? At
Yeah.
first he was Slippin' Jimmy, and then he's working in a mailroom for HHM. Then he gets his actual law degree, and then gets his own law business, and then he becomes Saul Goodman. It's kind of like he has these little bits of his past that he's embarrassed by or would get in trouble for or whatever, and he just wants to reset. He in his mind, that's in a past. Who he's presenting now is who he is, and it's kind of like he's recording over that VCR tape. That
Yeah,
makes
no, it
sense.
makes complete
And
sense.
there's
That's an
still
interesting
the
way of looking
old
at it. And
himself is still bleeding through the current presentation.
yeah,
And the current presentation maybe is getting more and more degraded as the real Saul becomes more convoluted and conflicted with all the things happening through his life. And anyway,
that's really
like
cool.
every single little aspect of this whole show, yes, there is meaning to the opening sequence.
I figured there was. It's really cool that someone actually put that together, and that's a really just interesting way of looking at the show.
Yep, yeah.
All right. Anything else before we dive in?
Well, it's sort of connected to diving in,
Hmm?
because one of the first things that happens in the episode is music is playing, right?
Yes.
And that's another thing you had asked about in the past was like, do the songs have meaning?
Hmm?
And the answer obviously is yes.
Yes.
But I don't think either of us had done detailed research
Hmm.
into the different songs. They've had so many. But I did a little research. And one of the songs that plays, this is in an earlier episode.
Yeah.
I think it's an earlier season. But one of the songs is My Echo, My Shadow, and Me. And, excuse me, I think that Saul, that his echo, his shadow, like is the thing in the past. And depending on your perspective, maybe that's Slippin' Jimmy, or maybe it's just Jimmy.
Right.
And his shadow is the thing, or sorry, his echo is the thing that's being projected forward. Gene. It's kind of a reduced, an echo. It gets like kind of like the quality of the film at the beginning of the intro, and echo kind of like is reduced in quality and sound to the point where Gene is just this shell of a man presented in black and white. That's his echo. And in Me is his moment, Saul or maybe Jimmy, depending on what time period you're talking about. But anyway, I'm confident when they chose that song, they had that intent behind it. This episode, the song that's playing is sorry. It's called Perfect Day. And part of the lyrics, I'm gonna like the final lyrics of the songs was, "It's the perfect way to end a perfect day.
Yep.
It's the perfect way to say I love you." And in this episode, for as far as I know, the only time on screen they ever say it, Jimmy and Kim tell each other they love each other.
I didn't even realize that that was the only time I met. You knew it. You felt it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure
realize
they've said it to each other a bunch of times,
Yeah.
but we've just never witnessed it.
Yeah.
And some people maybe even think that was the first time, but if you think about it, I don't think either of them behaved like it was the first time. In that moment, this episode, I don't know. It's possible that they're mixed up with so many other things going on that it's hard to analyze exactly what that response was, but it makes sense to me. They've said it a bunch of times, and this is just the first time we've seen it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I really like the opening and the song choice. And like this is coming right off of Howard, and Mike was like, "We have to act like this is a regular day to you guys," and I'm sitting there like, "Man, this is gonna be hard."
Yeah.
But you see it. You see it through a song, and there's no dialogue whatsoever other than the music that's playing. And you just get to see Kim and Jimmy and Mike do their day-to-day lives. Mike obviously he has to cover up stuff. So that's kind of, like you get to see the aftermath of exactly how he covers up this event. But then at the end, after everything, like the music cuts off and you see them in their apartment, Jim and Kimmy, because they come back home and, it's like nothing ever happened. They obviously, Mike does a great job. But the music cuts off and they go into the room. And I think they actually go into a different, like apartment complex or something. I didn't catch it the first time, but, I realized they couldn't be in the house for that day, at least that day, Well,
during the day, they were at work.
Exactly.
I think they went to work like normal, and during the day, Mike and crew clean up the evidence of the murder. Then they come home. And like you said, I think they were at home. They kind of like looked down at the spot on the floor where it happened. And then we cut to an exterior shot, I'm pretty sure, of a motel. I think they didn't have it in them to spend the night there that night. They couldn't handle it.
Yep, I was thinking. But
because it was a 2-story building, and we know that they're on like the 4-story.
Yeah.
And it also, when the interior shot, there's no personal effects around the bed or the dresser.
Exactly.
It's a different bedspread, a different art on the wall. So I think they just couldn't handle being there that night and stayed in a motel.
Makes sense. But the first dialogue that's said is what we saw in the preview of last episode, which is what Saul talks about eventually they'll forget. At least they hope they'll forget, And I thought that was a really neat way of just like introducing the opening scene. Because it's kind of sad. Like, that they're trying to get over. They're trying to forget, but they're not going to forget. And to end it on that note after that song, I don't know, just really nice, kind of beautiful in its own way, really well edited cinematography act. I don't know, just it was nice.
In so many ways, so many times this show is like they're perfect at showing and not telling.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Like, we had to piece together that they spent the night in that motel.
Yeah.
We didn't see them check in at the front door. They didn't talk about it, but we can figure that out. As long as you've been watching a show and you've been paying attention, they could do something like that and you can piece it together. And I think I want to give it credit for being very elegant storytelling. They didn't have to spend a lot of time or effort, or it didn't have any dialogue or an extra scene or anything. It just that exterior shot, them being in a different interior, us paying attention. We can piece that together, and it adds. It makes sense with their characters.
Yeah,
and it adds a little extra meaning to what's happening. It's just excellent storytelling and filmmaking.
Yes. Really fast. What do you mean by that, Horns? He's like, I might have forgotten something, Flint. What do you mean? Oh, we did that response. But yeah, so after that, they cut to Gus, and he is driving somewhere. We realize
real quick.
Yeah,
I want to point out something. The very opening shot of the episode. Do you remember what it was? It was kind of an interesting cinematic shot. The very opening shot and the opening sequence. They end up going into like a full montage, but the beginning of it was kind of from beneath the O of the Saul Goodman sign being raised up by a crane on. So the opening shot and sequence of this episode was the literal rise of Saul Goodman.
That's actually pretty funny. That's actually really cool.
The rise and installation of Saul Goodman was the opening shot of this episode.
No, that's actually pretty awesome. I didn't even think about it that way. It's a really cool shot because I remember like, what the heck is that? As something's opening or moving up, and then you realize, that's Saul Goodman's sign.
And while we're on that, there's two other little pieces to that opening montage I wanted to mention. One, and you might even be able to give me a little insight. I thought about it for a minute and came up with some ideas, but one of the shots was when Mike was burning that evidence.
Yes. Oh, yeah, and the bonfire. Trash.
It was like from beneath the flames looking up at Mike.
Oh, I love that.
How they get that shot? How do they do?
So
my best guess is they must have some sort of like glass platform that they put the barrel on fire on top of it. The camera's underneath. Does that make sense to you?
So there's a couple of ways of doing this because they also did another cool shot with Mike when he's taking out the bullet You're like,
Yeah.
obviously, they didn't get inside that wall. They just made a wall, and they made a close up of that wall. And what's in the wall? The fiberglass. It's
Insulation.
really
Yeah.
simple to do something like that. It's not even in the same scene. Probably they probably did it externally somewhere else. Similarly with the fire, I think that's what they did with the fire. Well, they probably had a glass. They had a completely different trash can, and they did that shot. Cause I remember seeing that shot too, and I was like, that shot's awesome. And
the shot from the sides showing the barrel and the fire and Mike isn't necessarily the same barrel and fire where they stuck the camera underneath it.
Yeah.
But still, it's where they did it. It was outstanding.
Yeah.
It was unique
actually,
and
everything about that shot, there was 3 or 4 shots. I loved every one of them. Because it was just Mike at a night scene and him throwing stuff in the trash can. But each of the shot techniques or angles, I loved them. And then they ended it off with what you're talking about, the above the shot, or inside the barrel, with the fire. And I was like, that's freaking awesome. And a simple scene like that probably took hours to film. At least an hour. And people are like, that doesn't make any sense. No. He has to, for one, it may take 2 or 3 takes each shot. And then they have to rework, like I was talking about the barrel, like they have to probably get another barrel just for that shot. They have to prep a scene that may take like 20 minutes to set up. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah, just getting the fire started, making sure the flames aren't too high or too low.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that the lighting of the moment of night is dark enough to create the silhouette, and if too much wind comes by, ashes blow up. I can imagine all the minor little things that could go wrong. They have to like do it over again. One other moment from the montage I wanted to point it out.
Yeah.
It starts off with that sign being installed.
Yes.
And by the way, first color mention, they have Francesca and Saul. Like the camera kind of cuts a couple different angles of like the sign going up, and then of Francesca and Saul, like a shot from above as they watch it go up, right? And they're standing in the parking lot looking up, and they're specifically standing in the marking of the handicap spot, which is blue with a yellow outline, which at this moment they're sort of in establishing this legal facility. Blue is kind of like legitimate, but it's surrounded by yellow, uncertainty, conflict. They did, and the thing is, I always have to remind myself they didn't have to do that. That shot could have been like the next parking spot over, right?
Yep.
They did it on purpose. Every shot in here, they're very careful about how they frame it, what angle it is, what's included and what's not. And there's no question that was a coincidence. They specifically wanted to make sure to frame them in.
I didn't even catch that, obviously, which is, it's more amazing when you catch like the little details like that. Because you're right, yeah, they have to. What is it called? Spot check them, or they have to be in a certain spot,
Yeah.
And so they have to think about why would they stand here and all that. At least good filmmaking. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That's awesome.
One last thing, actually, it's probably like a dozen more things in a montage that could be talked about, but one more point I wanted to make. As the montage kind of comes to a close, right? It starts with that sign going up, and then we see Kim with her clients, and like you said, it kind of goes back and forth through their day, and some interesting segues to like Mike and a cleanup. Slightly humorous, even. We see like they're wiping blood off the floor.
I was about to mention that.
Kind of segues into Saul scooping ketchup with his fries,
Yeah, or barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, well, I'm about to
go ahead.
That scene, that's amazing that they managed to do that. The rotation of the hand going back and forth, the rhythm, I guess you could say, and then to Saul doing the rhythm of the same exact rhythm of the ketchup or barbecue sauce. I was like, man, that was such a clever way of putting in an edit.
Like, just if when the episode came on, I sit down at 7:00 at night or whatever and turn on a TV and Better Call Saul starts, and it was just that montage. It lasts 5 minutes and then the episode's over. The roll of credits, and you have to wait till next week. I would have been okay with that.
Yep.
We'd still be sitting here having this discussion, analyzing every detail. I'd still be thinking what's going to happen next week. I've been totally satisfied with the 5-minute montage.
Now, I think I talked about this before. This was like last, the first 7 episodes of the season, but I was watching Fear the Walking Dead, which I'm a huge fan of Walking Dead. Fear is iffy. It's like some seasons are great, some seasons are not. And I would watch, this latest season, and it was just bad. It was really bad. And then I would go into Better Call Saul, and the intro was a million times better than that episode. Everything combined in that episode. I like you said, if I had watched the intro, I'd have been like, my night's good. And I can't believe they did that.
Yeah.
So
last thing, the as the montage comes to a close, we get to the moment. It kind of like flows into some dialogue with Jimmy and Kim and them at the motel or whatever. The bit he tells her about,
Yeah.
how eventually, it'll take a while, but they will move on with their lives, on some level, But as the montage itself comes to a close, the last bit we get is Kim walking towards the exit.
That is some awesome symbolism for this episode alone.
I've said this before, if I had the patience or the wherewithal or whatever, I think if you, at each episode you watch, every time an episode ends and we want to like project forward and think about where it's going, we have all these like clues to draw on to figure out what they're going to do in the next episode. And sometimes you could be really close because they're so consistent and logical with how they tell the story and how they present the characters. But when you look back, you can always completely make sense of it. You always realize they had all the seeds planted, all the clues were there, everything is completely consistent and logical. Well, I think not just from episode to episode can you do that. I think from scene to scene that you can do that. I think that if after that month, I was kind of joking if that had been your whole episode, but like imagine if like your power went out, and right at the end of that montage, if you just were sitting there waiting for the power to go back on, I bet if you thought hard and long enough, if the power took long enough to come back on, you might start to suspect, you know what, this might be Kim's last episode.
Yep.
But of course we don't. We immediately want to keep watching. We're so desperate to take it all in. But I do think from scene to scene you can see where things are going. I made that point about when Lalo showed up and killed Howard. I think if you have been pausing and analyzing scene to scene and not just sit and watch the show through, you would have pieced together that was going to happen. You would have thought about the fact that, okay, Lalo just realized he needs to go see Saul. Howard isn't just going to go home and twiddle his thumbs after that day, right? So they're probably both heading there. It's probably not going to be chat over coffee. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you had the patience to stop after every scene and think about where they're going with it, you could piece together a lot. Anyway, let's move forward.
So I want to bring up one last thing. So the exit sign, I assume it was red, right? This could bring you color. You like add like another level as she's exiting.
She's leaving the criminality.
Exactly. The little thing, but
they can play around with, because sometimes I think about this a lot, because there seems to be a motif of exit signs in the show. They're often captured in the scene, and again, it would be so easy to just tilt the camera down a little and cut that off.
Exactly.
Shift it to the right, and sometimes it's behind one character and not another. Why is it? They could have had them standing on different sides of the room. I believe they're doing it for a reason, but they have a lot of ways for this to matter. Like the red exit sign could be, if red represents criminality, it could be. Oh, excuse me. It could be that there's criminality in their background. It could be that there's criminality looming over them. It could be that they're approaching it, leaving it. They could be coming, or it could be the exit and not the red. It could be that they're heading toward an exit, or leaving, losing their chance to exit. They're moving away from it, or you could see there's a million ways you could play with that interpretation. Also, sometimes the exit signs are green. They're not always red. And I'm sure that if they can decide to make it red or green,
Yeah.
as a filmmaker, they have that ability. You know, these aren't like college rookies. They've made one of the most successful shows of all time and moved on to another one of the most successful shows of all time. I think they've got the budget, the editing, the wherewithal to make those exit signs be in or not in the frame, to be red or green.
It's also just genius, like the fact that okay, what's red? What's red in the environment? That's good. You know, like the idea of like just coming up with signs that are red. Because if you don't look at it, if you're not paying attention, just assume it's the everyday thing. You're like, oh, I've seen that before. You brush it off, but when you realize there's
you don't even think about it actively. You don't. Exactly. It's not like you see it and decide it doesn't matter. You just don't even notice that.
Yeah, because it's part of everyday life, you know. So,
but when you decide
to
want to look at what's there, when you decide to look at around everything they're showing you, you start to realize like, oh, that is there for a reason, and it has this meaning. Yeah,
it's really hard to do, and they pull it off. It's really incredible that they can pull those scenes off, you know, like that. But to the next scene, we have Gus. You know, he's driving to Don Eladio's place. I'm not sure what to call it, base or whatever. But his house, his penthouse or whatever you want to call it.
His hacienda.
Yeah,
I think is what they would call it.
Yes, I was like trying to think of that. And there, when he enters, there is a blue car and there's a red car. And they're actually the same exact car, I think, but it's different colors.
I think they showed an above shot.
They did
5 different cars.
Yes.
And I thought about, I didn't fully do it, but I bet you could figure out which car belonged to which person.
I thought about that actually.
Some combination of what we've seen in the past or what makes sense for them to have. Like the Trans Am probably belongs to the Salamanca twins.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And the blue car, well, you know what? It'll be a whole tangent to talk about it, and I don't even totally remember what the cars were, so I'm hesitant to get into it. But I do want to point out one thing before we go too much farther forward.
Yeah.
Because it's a perfect segue from what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
We get an interior shot of Gus driving down the road on the way to Don Eladio's.
And we don't even know it's him 100%. At the very first shot, I didn't realize it was him. And I was like, oh, it's Gus. You know, like there's not obviously distinct things, but it was like very silhouette, dark and all that. So
yeah. He's driving at night, which matters because the interior lights of the car are on and kind of light it up mildly. And for the sake of filmmaking, they probably have some other lights going on.
Yeah.
But that shot could have been from the front of Gus as he's driving, or the side, or the car outside. It could have been him getting into the car, getting out. But they chose to show us this interior shot from over Gus's head so that we can see the interior lights of the car.
Yep.
Which could have been red or orange. It could have been any number of colors. Lights have all kinds of different interior lighting.
Yep.
But these were green. And green consistently has always been associated with some sort of facade, something being covered up or hidden or disguised or kept safe at that realm. And here is Gus about to go maintain his facade. He's about to go pretend like he didn't just kill Lalo, right? He's lit up in green on purpose, even though it's an incidental background thing, kind of like an exit sign. It's green lights in a car, and they definitely could have had those lights be any color, but they made them green because this is a moment where Gus is putting up a facade.
Yep, no, that's awesome. That's great. I didn't even catch that, which is funny.
Yeah.
He drives past the blue car, the red car, and then parks right next to the red car. And then we get this upper shot, and you're like, okay, they were distinctly blue and red. Like they're just like so obvious because everything else is like gray or silver, you know, like something that's like a neutral color. And you have, if you know, he parks his car, he goes out and he's on the right hand side and the cars are on the left hand side. The red car is more closer to him and he walks away. He goes in the opposite direction to the house. But yeah, it was just a neat, you know, I'm trying to think of like if he was like trying to go toward or away from the red car or the you know the obviously he's at Don Eladio's. That's like a bad place, you know.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was a neat shot, you know, nonetheless. Don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, Not anything more. Not anything more.
Yeah.
I'll bring back in. I will tell you now. I think that the blue car was Don Eladio's.
I
And
oh, you do?
yes,
I
and
thought it was.
I'll even.
I'll be honest. I thought it was Bolsa's, but
I think Bolsa. Okay, so one of the cars, Gus has probably like. All right, we'll go. Let's talk about the cars.
actually,
Let's just do it.
wait.
Okay.
Couldn't it be both his cars? Couldn't Don Eladio own both the blue and
Don
red?
Eladio can own 20 cars.
Well, he
but
can,
we
but
know that there were like we know Bolsa was there, Don Eladio was there, the twins are there.
yep, and Hector.
Hector is there. Gus pulled up. He's the fifth car. I think that there's 5 parties that are there. I think each of those cars belong to one of the people in this group that's meeting.
Okay.
And I bet if you go back,
Huh?
if you remember in the end of last season, Lalo gives Don Eladio a car with the trunk full of cash. I bet that was one of the cars there. I'm not sure. I wish I could remember. I would be extra excited to find out that it was the blue car. But
So
I'll tell you why. Oh, go
okay,
ahead.
I was gonna say if it is a blue car, why? Well, for one, why, and two, what symbolism in that?
Good. Okay, so one clue is that Don Eladio was wearing a blue shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Both his car and his shirt being blue are a little against what we normally see with blue, but I can explain this, and it helps explain some other things too through the course of the show. Okay, so one, let me clarify. Generally, what blue tends to represent is legal, legitimate, protagonist, good guy, authority. You see how all those are kind of in the same realm, but they're all a little bit different, right? Like you can be doing something legal even if you're a bad guy. And you could be a bad guy or you could be a good guy even if you break some law. They're not quite exactly the same.
Right.
And authority is often, police are often in blue and they're authorities, but sometimes police do bad things. And sometimes someone might be an authority, even if they're not a cop, they might be in charge of a business or, anyway, you see how they're all kind of connected and blue could go for any of them. So one, keep that in mind. Two, sometimes they use, I don't know if this is quite the case in this here, but I just do, as long as we're talking about it, I want to point out that a lot of times colors can be used relatively. So one of the best examples is, by the way, blue, good, positive, legal, red, criminal, bad guy, illegal, negative. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the very beginning, this is one of the best demonstrations of this was Tuco was like wild and crazy and angry, and he wanted to murder the 2 skaters and Saul, right? They got mixed up in the scam. They're supposed to be the Kettlemans, but ended up being Tuco's grandma. That whole scenario. And so Tuco in his red shirt is ready to just murder everybody. Nacho shows up and he's calm. He's sort of the voice of reason. He's trying to talk Tuco out of this, and he's wearing a blue shirt. Now, next time we see Nacho, he comes up to Saul trying to extort him, and he's wearing a red shirt. So Nacho generally is, toward the beginning at least, bad guy, criminal, dressed in red. But in this moment, relative to Tuco, he was the good guy, right? We were rooting for Nacho to calm things down. He's the protagonist. Tuco is the crazy, angry murderer, right? So it can be used relatively. Now, I don't think that relative angle is going to matter here, but I just wanted to point out the way they can use colors a little differently than you might expect. In this scenario, the way I think it's being used is blue equals authority. Don Eladio is the one in charge. Even if he's not exactly illegal or a good guy, he's the authority in this scenario.
He's the judge, the jury almost.
And in fact, he might even be the law. They've called in the past, this is Salamanca land. You know what I mean? Like in this territory of Mexico, he might literally be the law. He might, if
that makes a lot of sense.
Walked out in the street and shot someone in the head, the police wouldn't arrest him because he hired all the police. So anyway, that's what makes me think.
Also, this kind of goes back to, remember how I was saying that Lalo was wearing blue shoes, and I was like, why? Why would they he's an authority in his own way, you could argue. Or he's trying to solve this crime that he felt he was wronged with, his family was murdered.
He's a protagonist, right? Because he was attacked in his home, his friends and loved ones were murdered.
He was walked over, maybe,
on some level we're rooting for him. Also, the person he's pitted against, Gus, is a sociopathic murderer also. So like, it's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
Gus is the good guy and Lalo's the bad guy.
Right. But Lalo may be the good guy in that situation because
Yes.
Gus murdered his family.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was supposed to murder him, but
he's relatively a protagonist. On some level, he's relatively an authority. So
interesting. But yeah,
maybe him wearing blue shoes is him like walking on authority. Like
that's what I was thinking.
Authority above the law.
Yeah.
I just thought that's a good one. He's above the law. He's walking on blue. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, but no, that's cool. So Gus, goes into this meeting, and Hector is pretty much trying to accuse him, Gus, of murdering Lalo, of trying to backstab Don Eladio. And you remember Hector can't talk, so he has his twin / his little bell, to try to convey this. And it's interesting, just because will Don Eladio, I don't want to say fall for it, but like
buy it. Yeah,
buy it.
Fall
But that's
for it
what
is not correct because Hector is right. Hector is telling the truth.
Absolutely. Hector's not wearing blue on, is he? I didn't catch that, but he's not wearing like a blue hat or anything, is he?
I think he had a white shirt and a white hat, and
I was thinking that too.
Trim of color on him.
Yeah,
but yeah, he wasn't. Another thing that's worth noting, this is another way they present colors, sort of like I was talking about, relatively. They could have someone that's for a moment in a good guy position or bad guy position. They also can use colors to varying degrees. So if someone shows up driving a red car with a red shirt and a red hat and pulls out their red wallet, okay, they're clearly, definitively all in bad guy. But if someone shows up wearing a gray suit with a black tie that has a red stripe on it, like, oh, okay, there's a hint of bad guy to them. You're right. So Hector is not wearing a red shirt and a red hat. So we know, generally speaking, he's a bad guy, but they're not clearly presenting him as the antagonist of this moment.
Right.
And no one is in a big, bright, obvious red.
Outfit. Gus is wearing gray. I think like a gray suit or something like that.
I think gray, just so you know, by the way, I think gray represents lifeless, emotionless, mechanical. I don't know if we talked about that before, but I'm drawing that.
I remember you saying that. Yeah,
that's how they present Gene in the future. He's just this shell of a dude. He's got no passion. He's got no energy. He's just going through the motions of his life. And I think Gus is like that sometimes too.
Oh yeah,
he's just this cold,
calculated,
revenge-minded, calculated killer. He doesn't get excited or upset.
Yep.
So he typically is in neutral colors, gray. There's some exceptions, of course, but
yeah,
sometimes Gus is angry or confused. Sometimes his emotions and his acting keep him looking cold, but we will know from the red tie or the yellow tie that he's confused or angry or whatever. But by the way, I wanted to back up real quick.
Yeah.
There was another really subtle moment that I thought was so good. Do you remember when Gus first pulls his car up?
Yep.
And he only has his shirt on. He's taking his jacket off.
You're right. He had a suit in the back.
He opens the car and bends over to get the jacket, and he winces a little bit because he still has a bullet wound.
Yes, and he's acting like it didn't happen.
He's trying to keep cool.
I remember.
They pat him down, and they like pat.
He gets like a little squint. Yeah. He's like, great acting. And also, the actor has to act like he's fine, Really awesome.
Act like he's acting like he's fine.
That's what but no, very awesome and attention to detail on that. But yeah, so obviously Balsa's there to make sure that everything goes. Basically, he doesn't want a war. He doesn't want Hector and Gus fighting each other, so he's there to be the mediator almost, and he wants there to be the mediator. In the back of his head, he thinks that someone's going to get killed probably, but, which that's bad for business. He doesn't want that, because he's kind of a business type of person. But Hector kind of like, is like look into Gus's eyes and he's lying, he did what he did or something like that,
You'll see the hate in his eyes.
Yeah.
And oh man, Eric, I wish I had gotten this image and had you brought it up. I don't know if you noticed this. I didn't notice it. Rita pointed it out to me.
Uh-huh.
That when they cut to Gus at that moment,
Yeah.
the angle of his head, and he's wearing glasses.
Yeah.
Because remember, this is at night.
Yeah.
And there's like a fire
Fire
pit
pit.
and candles all around.
Yeah.
The flames of the fire are flickering in Gus's glasses.
That's awesome.
It is. Go back and watch that scene again. Like, whoa, it was really, really good. I paused it right on there. I was like, holy crap, good call, Rita. Yeah. It's really good. It's really menacing when you pause it right at that moment and look at it. It's burning hatred inside of Gus. Yeah.
That's actually really cool. But yeah, the scene goes, you know, like Don Eladio's like, whatever, Hector, and like pretty much just tells him to go away. You know, go in my bed. You'll have a good time there. I have ladies for you. Just kind of brushes it off. You know, I don't know if he like believes it or if he doesn't. Oh, obviously he cares and he doesn't. Like, he may also be like, you know, business too, kind of, I think. But, you know, like at the end of the scene, he tells Gus, he's like, you know, I see hatred in your eyes. But then he also says that, actually, give me a sec. What was the exact quote?
He said, a little bit's okay.
Yeah.
Just remember who's boss.
Exactly. And that's important to him, you know, because he needs to know that he's the boss. You know, that Don Eladio's the boss. You know, that no one's gonna basically rise over him, and you know, like if he needs to kill people, he'll kill people. But you know, but he also knows. I feel like what's good business. You know, what's good, because if the whole pack of people start dying, he's gonna lose money, and he wants his money. You know,
he'll lose a lot of money in a lot of different ways. Because I mean, the thing is, it'll be like, if Gus's people and the Salamanca's people start shooting and killing each other, like, not only are those people, you know, not gonna be dealing the drugs and delivering money, but you're gonna need new people to replace them, to train them. They're gonna have families. There's gonna be murder investigations. Cops are gonna get involved. Drugs are gonna get seized. You see how it can like balloon out of control.
Exactly.
And at this level of operations, I mean, you got to remember that Walt made $1 million. Over
no,
a million.
3 million.
Something
3
like
million.
That,
It was ridiculous. In
like
3 months.
No, right. From his first batch, from his first cook.
Yep.
1 day's work worth of meth. Now, it took a lot more than 1 day's worth to get it all distributed, but that's the value that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And they're moving this across multiple states, multiple countries.
The West Coast.
They've got like a German company to help ship, and you know, this is a huge operation. There are stories, Flint, about real drug deals in Colombia in the 80s. What's that guy? Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, that's the guy who's supposed to be like Walt, right?
No.
There's like, somebody else. Okay, I remember seeing something on YouTube.
You can imagine someone that was in charge of 10 Don Eladios. That's what Pablo Escobar was like. Okay. Someone that had 10 Don Eladios underneath him, and each Don Eladio has a Gus and a Walt under them.
Yeah.
You know, Pablo Escobar, it's hard to understand. He was probably more important than most leaders of the. You know, he was probably he was more important than like the president of England, the minister, prime minister of England. You know what I mean? That's how much money and power he had. His budget for rubber bands that they used to wrap around stacks of $100 bills.
Yeah.
He spent something like $1,000 a day on rubber bands to wrap up $100 bills. So each rubber band is wrapping up a stack of $100 bills. You know how many rubber bands you could buy for $1,000? He had to buy it every single day. Do you understand? I mean, we're talking billions and billions and billions. Now, again, Don Eladio is not at that level.
No.
But he is at the level where he's probably making hundreds of millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. And if two gangs start fighting among each other, he might start losing millions of dollars a day for weeks and weeks, and he just doesn't want that to happen.
Exactly.
He doesn't care if Hector thinks that someone killed, so whatever, Hector, go to sleep. Gus, do what I tell you. Bolsa, make sure they don't fight with each other. Let's just keep making the millions of dollars.
It's a lot like Tywin Lannister. In ways.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah.
But yeah, you know, absolutely right. You know, so yeah, it's just interesting seeing him, you know, like just listen and then just make his authority, you know. but yeah, that was that scene. And I remember like the I guess the screenshot or the snapshot of like or the thumbnail they used for the episode was Don Eladio, and I didn't even remember who he was until I actually saw him in the scene. I was like, oh, that's Don Eladio. But when I saw the picture of him, I was like, who's that? You don't see him until like season 4 of Breaking Bad. And this is the first time you see him in.
I'm trying to remember, but I think he was in another scene. No, he was in the last season of Better Call Saul because Lalo went to see him with Nacho.
Oh,
Gave him the car and the money, and Nacho
yeah, I
met with
forgot
him.
about
He's
that.
kind of
Then
being
yeah,
okayed as a captain or whatever. And
yeah. Okay.
but he is a character that comes up
Yeah,
few and far between.
like you hear more about him than see him.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
we should move forward, but later on, I'm gonna come back and reference this moment with we just talked about. Okay.
So the next thing is with Gus meeting Mike in his house, safe house. And he just kind of wants an update. Mike tells him what's going on with Kim and Jimmy, that they're pretty much acting great. That nothing basically ever happened. And Gus is like, how's the construction going? Or what's, when are we going to start construction? And it throws Mike off, like, because, he's been dealing with like all this fallback almost. He's like, construction? Well, why are you even thinking that? That's why I kind of got the mindset of what Mike says. He doesn't say this, obviously. It's just his eyes. But he answers them. He's like, it's going to take time. We need more people. We need like engineers and the workers. The Gus is like, just start it. Just get it done. So kind of cold and calculated, almost.
By the way, was this the very next scene? I'm trying to remember because when Gus there was a scene where Gus like opens the windows in his house. Was that before or after this meeting?
That is before. That is the in between of what I said. Yeah, I forgot. Okay. He comes home and like it was like this dark scene, with Don Eladio, and then the next scene's this like bright scene, day. He opens the door.
I think that scene, by the way, it's another example of everything they do has meaning. I think that's Gus has finally like moved past this phase of fear and hiding. And he's opening up the windows and letting the light in. I think that was a very symbolic moment when he got back from Mexico.
I think so
he's
too.
like, okay, I can move forward now. And part of that is saying, all right, Mike, let's get construction going. Hire another engineer. Let's move on,
Yeah. But after that, Gus goes to like some restaurant, like some fancy restaurant, and he sits at the bar and he orders a cup of wine, which I forget, wine's red. A lot of the time.
There's different colors of wine.
No. I mean, I know there's like sometimes like white or something like that, but there was red in the scene. There was red wine in the scene.
Oh, yes. He orders red wine.
Yeah. And a guy comes over that
hold on, before we get into this.
Yes.
There's two key bits from that last scene.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
One is I think that one thing we're kind of seeing when Gus opens up that house, he's letting a light in, but it's still a pretty empty, lonely house. Gus doesn't really have anyone to share his victory with. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And even when he goes to Mike, it's still like all business. And they close that metal door in the corridor, kind of sealing them. I think that represents a couple things. One, Gus is still kind of got himself closed in. He's sort of, even if he can let the light in, he's still in this sort of lonely cage. And maybe Mike is too, we'll get to that in a minute because I think they do a very similar thing with Mike later on.
Yeah.
But also I wonder if that represented a barrier between Gus and Mike. I wonder if remember I said at the last end of that last episode, I think that Gus is a little perturbed with Mike for screwing things up, and that Mike maybe is a little frightened. Mike feels like, do you know how much I did for you? Like, it might not have worked out perfectly, but you're lucky you're alive. That's kind of what Mike is feeling. And Gus is kind of feeling like, hey, if you had done better, you think you did good, but you could have done better, and I wouldn't have got shot. Things, we might not be in this mess. And so I think there's they still have a certain amount of respect from each other, but they still have a certain distance from each other, a barrier between them.
Yeah.
And I wondered, too, especially since it just followed that scene where Eladio told Gus, like, I see a little hate in your eyes. That's okay. Just remember who's boss. Mike is probably pissed at Gus for having to kill Werner. And I think there's a little hate in Gus's
Yes.
eye and Mike's eyes when he looks at Gus. And Gus has the same thought as Eladio. He's like, little's okay. Just remember who's boss.
Yeah.
Get
That's
that
a good point.
engineer. Yeah.
Actually, yeah. So, where were we? Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so now Gus is at the bar.
Yeah. And he orders wine, and a guy comes over who he seems to know. Like his name is David, but he's like a waiter, I guess. I'm not quite sure his thing. He's a worker there. I got the vibe he was some type of like person who waits, or not waits, but like serves.
Yeah, I think he could be he might be like the owner or a manager, or he might even be. I had a friend whose job was to procure wine for a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So he would go to like the different wineries and taste the wines and learn about them and then make orders and then present them to the customers, the bar, whatever. And there also is there's a word for a person who is an expert at wines. I don't know if I'm going to say it right, but it's something like, it's like a French word, so it's always weird. Sommelier, something like that. But I think that's what this guy is. He might just be a waiter, but he might be the owner or the manager, or maybe just an expert on wine. Yeah. But it seems pretty clear that Gus has been here before. He knows this guy. They have some sort of reputation or rapport.
I couldn't help but feel a chemistry between them. I don't know if it was just me, but I felt, for one, you don't see Gus really smile ever. He smiled a couple times in the scene, and I also thought he was blushing, possibly. I don't know that 100%. Something was going on between him and David.
So I believe, I don't think this is some random theory I have. I think that Gus is gay.
Oh, he says it because his partner was, a guy who got killed by Don Eladio. So,
but sometimes when you say partner, you mean business partner.
Oh,
and
I actually got more.
There's a lot of motivation for Gus to hide the fact that he's gay, because it might make these macho cartel guys not trust him or not like him or want to kill him.
Yeah,
it might make some of the people that he has working for him not. There's a prejudice, especially even now there is, even though we're more open to it now than we were a couple of generations ago. But this is taking back. This is all taking place 15-ish years ago.
Yeah.
It's something you can see that Gus would need to hide.
Yeah.
And they never outright say it in the show, but just like all the other things we've talked about, the show doesn't always just outright tell us. They leave it for us to figure out. And I think this is something both in general, I feel clear that Gus is gay. And
I thought that too, so.
And in this moment, I think he's clearly flirting with this guy.
Yeah. I got that vibe, and you don't see Gus ever really do this, so it was neat to see him dive into this side of him that you just don't see,
And I think that's the point of this scene.
Yeah,
is that he's starting to, I don't know what word to use, indulge. He's enjoying this wine. He's flirting with someone at the bar. This is kind of like a celebration. It's kind of like a normal life thing. And in the middle of it, Gus suddenly
realizes something,
straightens up and realizes, can't do this. If I develop a relationship with this guy, it's putting him in danger. I'll be putting himself in danger. I can't maintain this. I need to keep focused on my work. I need to keep looking over my shoulder. I'm trying to get revenge right now. I don't have time for this celebration. I don't have time for this pleasure. In this scene, unlike before when he was wearing gray, he's wearing red, right? Like I think that it's a reminder that he is mixed up in crime and he can't just live this normal life.
And he's drinking red wine, if that has, obviously, and he leaves the cup, with some wine in it behind. That actually kind of.
It's a good tip. He wants to be polite.
Yes.
But he can't.
He can't
pursue this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's one more. My next point here, I think, might be a little bit of a stretch. It's something I wonder. because we've seen a couple times in the past, we've seen Gus make a realization. And again, they never straight up tell us, but we figure out that Gus realized when Kim said that Jimmy talked Lalo out of sending him.
Yeah.
Gus realized in that moment. We saw through the acting and the editing.
Yeah.
Gus realized, wait a minute, this is a distraction. Lalo has a different plan.
Yeah.
We saw earlier in the season when Gus is working at the restaurant and offers someone the spicy curls, and he's like, wait a minute, spicy curls, Madrigal, Lalo's in Germany.
Yeah.
I wonder if there was a similar moment. It might have just been him that, we saw a similar sort of like shift in his presentation.
Yeah.
And it might have just been him realizing, oh, wait, I can't do this. But I think there might have been a little bit more to it. I think he might have realized, because in the prior scene with Eladio and Hector and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, not the directly prior scene, but
yeah.
The Hector said he wanted blood for blood.
Yep.
On its own, no big deal. That phrase has been used before. Then, when Gus is tasting the wine, talking with the sommelier, however you say that word, about it, he says, "Oh, it almost tastes like blood, the iron oxide in the soil." And maybe just talking about wine, that's a common way to describe the flavor. But when you put those two things together, and when you know that Gus ends up poisoning Don Eladio, I wonder if that was the moment he got the idea. I wonder if in that moment he's like, ooh, I know how I can get him.
I think that it would make a lot of sense. That would take a lot of years of patience, because we know that it doesn't happen
immediately. Building that lab takes a lot of years of patience.
No, that's
yeah.
I think it's a very fair statement. That and a lot of times scenes have double meaning, so
yeah. I'm not super confident about it, but
it could make sense.
Yeah, right. I don't think there's anything to discredit it. That doesn't mean it's true, but I don't think there's anything that makes it not be true.
Exactly. It's cool. So after that, anything else? I guess in the wine scene.
No, I don't think so.
We get Mike, and Mike is at his house, and he has like this special hideout spot that he keeps items, like special items, and he keeps Manuel Nacho's dad's driver's license in there, and he like looks at it and then puts it down and like goes and like tries to relax, it looks like, but he just can't.
It starts off, he's putting his gun away, right?
That's right. Yeah.
For the past few days or weeks, he's been walking around with a gun expecting some kind of confrontation, but now that moment's kind of passed.
That's true.
So he opens up this, pulls up this panel in his closet where he's got a gun case. By the way, the panel in a closet.
Yes. I mean, I guess Walter. Green.
What color do you think it is?
Green.
Green. Exactly. Yep. So anyway, in the same case where he's got the gun, he has that ID.
Yeah. So he obviously goes and gets this ID and goes. Well, I don't know if he gets it, but he gets the idea. At least he wants to talk to Nacho's dad, Manuel. Am I saying that right?
I think so, Manuel.
Yeah. And Manuel's like, at his garage shop, doing work. And he gets a call from Walter, I'm sorry, Mike. And Mike tells him he needs to talk to him outside. So they have like a fence in between them, and they're talking. Mike, I feel like he has to just get this off his chest. That's kind of what. Because I was thinking, like, I don't know if this is a good idea for Mike to do this. In the back of my head, I don't know if anything bad could happen. I mean, obviously we know in the future what happens. With. It doesn't seem like this has any repercussions, I guess, but I was still a little worried, because I'm like, how much is he going to tell him? But he doesn't, he kind of vaguely tells him that Nacho's just not coming back, and
he tells him it's clearly implied.
Absolutely, yeah. He doesn't directly say, Nacho died, but he
said he went easy. There was no pain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And and he talked about like he's gonna get, I don't say revenge or something like that, but like something along those lines.
He said there will be justice.
Yeah, that's the word. Thank you. And Manuel just kind of looks at him like there's no justice, you know. He kind of like tells him like just a different side of, you know, like pretty much what Manuel believes, because he's always been for like kind of a simple guy, but he doesn't like to get involved in any of this, illegal stuff, because he just thinks it's not right, and he feels like there just can be no justice.
He says what you're calling, Manuel tells Mike, what you're calling justice is just revenge.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no justice to be had. You're just trying to get revenge. And I think this scene is really crucial because it's doing something that I have sort of believed, that Mike in certain ways can come across as a good guy. He seems like a protagonist. A lot of people like Mike.
Yeah,
but the fact is, he's a murderer. He is a murderer. He is a bad guy. He might have some code or thinks he has some kind of code.
Yeah.
But he murdered Werner. He did not have to do that. He didn't have to work for Gus. He might even have to risk his life. But hey, if you want to be a good guy, you risk your life for the right thing. You don't murder someone for the wrong thing.
Right.
And that's what Mike is doing. And I think that Mike is just lying to himself in the same way that Gus, in that scene at the bar, straightens himself out of this moment of normal life so that he can go back to his work on revenge. It's the same thing as Mike is doing. Gus says he's doing it for his daughter or his granddaughter, for his family. That's the same thing Walt tells himself. But really, Walt is just an evil person. He's being selfish. He's good at what he does, and he likes doing it, and he's trying to cut corners from what he should do, and he's willing to murder people along the way. And
Walter White, right? You're talking about
Walt, right?
Yeah. I actually did not like Walt, which is funny. In the long run, just because of this, like he has like almost a double standard,
Yeah. Mike and Walt both lie to themselves about why they're doing this. They make themselves feel like it's okay because they're doing it for their families. But it's really not okay what they're doing, and it's not really just for their families.
Right. So yeah, it was a powerful scene, and like kind of sad
in
almost.
This scene, yes, it was. I think it was really sad. Real quick, just want to point out when they're having that conversation, we get a couple different angles.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at Gus's at Manuel, in the background behind him, there's like a support beam of the building. With this blue that hovers right over his head. When we cut back to Mike, we're seeing him through a fence. He's caged in. He's trapped in this world of revenge and criminality.
That's awesome. So yeah, so there's that.
And by the way, I want to clarify. I think that's the last we see of Mike this season. I think that's our final Mike scene.
I thought about it. But
same thing with Gus.
Yeah. I guess we'll talk about in a moment. But
we'll make some predictions.
But yeah. I debated about that because I was shocked about. I was shocked and not shocked about the flash forward. But after this is the Kim and Jimmy scene, where they're in their apartment and basically,
wait, no. They got to go to the funeral service first.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I almost missed that. So I was kind of expecting and wanting this scene because this is a scene where I thought that Cliff, you get to at least see what's on Cliff's mind and Cheryl's. Is it Cheryl?
Yep.
Yeah. And they're at HHM, right? Yeah. I almost said HH Greg. HHM, and it's a funeral, or for an after funeral. I'm not quite sure, but of Howard, and you see like a ton of pictures, and a lot of them are of him in scuba gear or something like that, which I thought was funny because he drowned. Supposedly in the story, he drowned it.
Yeah. I think, by the way, that what I piece together, they don't say this, but what makes sense to me when I think about it all, we see that Cheryl isn't really buying the circumstances of his death.
No.
And she's probably the one that chose what pictures would be portrayed of Howard. And so she chose pictures that are far from what you would expect from someone who's addicted to drugs and drowned.
Exactly.
She chose pictures of him doing fun, athletic things,
Mhm.
in good shape, on like water sports. I think she was trying to choose images that countered the story that was being told about
And
him,
I got that
which
vibe
was not true.
subconsciously.
It was not a true story.
Yeah. No, I said I got that vibe subconsciously when you say that, because I was like, that's what I thought of too. That this is the real man he is, not this thing that people are telling who he was. I like that connection.
Before we get too deep into the scene, I want to point out that we start off with Jimmy and Kim at the elevator about to go up into the building.
Oh yeah. And they talk about the trash can. They're like, they got a new trash can.
Yeah.
It reminded me of like when they very first. I think this is the first scene that Kim was introduced. I could be wrong on that. But she was smoking, and he goes up and he kicks the trash can. Am I correct on that?
It's the second
scene. Okay.
Second shot that Kim is in. In the first episode of the first season, Jimmy goes to HHM to confront Howard about Chuck. It's a whole convoluted thing, but Chuck is supposed to be working there, but he's sick and they're trying to pay him, and that might imply that he's not working there. So anyway, Chuck wants to have it out with Howard about how much money Chuck should be getting, etc. And he goes to this same elevator well, which, by the way, is cast in green. And I think both that first time Jimmy went and this time Jimmy and Kim are going, before they pass through this elevator and go into HHM, they kind of have to put on their game face. They have to put up this facade. They have to like get ready for this confrontation, this story that they're going to tell. I think it's perfect. And that in the opening scene, they focus on Jimmy's finger pressing the button of the elevator, just like they do in this scene. This is a perfect bookend to HHM, which we find out this is the end of HHM.
Yes. And we kind of predicted that to a degree, but
yeah. Excuse me. So in that episode, when he goes up to confront Howard, he doesn't quite get what he wants out of Howard. He maybe got to kind of say his piece, but he still didn't get the results he wanted. And as he's leaving, it gets a little worse because he sees in the background the Kettlemans, Jimmy thought he was going to get them as clients, and it was going to be a big case. And he sees the Kettlemans meeting with Howard, taking on the case. It's this extra moment of defeat that, like, not only did he not get the Kettlemans, but Howard did get the Kettlemans. And he comes out of the elevator. Just has a temper tantrum and kicks that can away. When he met with Howard in that boardroom, Kim was sitting right next to Howard. She was right at Howard's side through that interaction.
Yeah.
But then when Jimmy gets down the stairs, Kim is waiting out the stairs with him, smoking a cigarette. They talk for a minute. Kim goes back inside, but on her way in, she picks up the trash can, puts the trash back in, puts the lid on top. She cleans up Jimmy's mess, like she often does.
Yeah.
Very symbolic of the relationship to come in that first scene. And maybe it's symbolic now that trash can has been replaced.
Yeah. That's cool. So they go and they talk to God, it was Kim's boss. Can't remember his name. Schweiker. Yes. And they have he's like, he was a good man. He's like talking about Howard. And I think he was like just sad. Yeah. He was a little sad just because of what a great person he was. But then they go up and they're like, we need to go confront basically Cheryl. They knew this was going to be a bigger deal. And Cliff is right next to her. And I actually thought that Cliff was going to have a little bit more fight in him, but he just accepted. He's like, he's been through it before. I mean, it makes sense. His son, I assume his son died to this, right?
I don't think they made it clear that his son had died. They may have, and I just don't remember it properly. But we know his son has been dealing with addiction. We know that's part of Cliff's character. Whether his son is dead or not, I'm not positive.
So
I think there's some subtext. I'll get to it as we talk through this, but I think Howard's behavior here makes a lot of sense when you kind of piece together all the nuance.
Oh, Cliff's behavior.
Cliff, sorry, not
Yeah,
Howard.
yeah.
Cliff. Yeah.
But Cheryl, just like we thought, was going to have like just not accept us. Like it doesn't make any sense, which it doesn't. You know, and Jimmy and Kim have to sell this. You know, they have to convince her to a degree that this is true. You know, and Kim just basically, well, obviously she lies. You know, about like an event that happened that didn't happen. You know, that Howard was sniffing and she witnessed this at HHM, which is it's just sad. It's just, you know, like obviously she does it with a straight face and like it's hard to see somebody do that to somebody, you know, like obviously they have to, but like still doesn't make it right, you know.
So yeah, Jimmy does a pretty good job. If you notice, when he first goes up, he offers his hand. She crosses her arms. You know, she definitely remembers that Howard warned her about him, and she challenges him on it.
Yeah.
And he kind of sidesteps it, doesn't quite give her a straight answer, and she pushes harder. And so he kind of leans in a little closer and talks a little softer. He's kind of trying to level with her. And he avoids telling straight up lies. He's kind of trying to explain it, but is careful not to tell a straight up lie. And she's still not having it. And that's when Kim steps in. And here's the thing. What Kim did was just diabolical.
It really was.
When she says, when she tells the story about having, you know, the made up story about having seen Howard using cocaine. But, you know, it was like this embarrassing moment, and they just never addressed it. They never talked about it again.
Yeah.
And Kim says, I wish I had now. I wish I had said something about it now, seeing how things turn out. What she's doing there, she's digging at Cliff. Because remember, after she says this, Cheryl turns to Cliff, and she's like, what about you? Have you ever seen anything that would make you think this? You know what Cliff's thinking about? Is that bag of cocaine at the locker room that Jimmy planted.
Yeah.
He's thinking about that. And he tells her, rather than say, no, I never saw anything, which would be a lie, he says, this isn't the time or place.
Yes.
And Cheryl knows, since he didn't say, no, I never saw anything, that when he says this isn't the time or place, that he must have seen something. And so... does that make sense?
Yes,
like,
yes.
Kim basically gets Cliff to tell Cheryl that he was using. She's able to imply that they're able to use the scan they were running before. They keep reaping it. They keep being able to sow from it, right? And or sowing from what they had, reaping from what they had sowed before.
Yeah.
And so not only that, but it also makes Cliff feel guilty. He's way less likely to confront or question Jimmy or Kim about this because he suddenly has this guilt over having not come forward, like Kim says she wished she had.
Yeah.
And Kim also puts a guilt trip on Cheryl. I don't know if Kim knows that Kim does know that Howard and Cheryl were on the outs because Howard told him. Howard told him he was having marriage trouble when he came over that night in his little tirade. And so when Kim leans into Cheryl and says, you know, he's your husband. You would know better than anybody. Maybe what I saw was wrong. Kim knows that Cheryl wouldn't know better than anyone because they haven't been close. And since they haven't been close, she hasn't seen the signs. She wouldn't know the truth. And if they had stayed close, maybe she would have seen it and could have saved him. And so now Cheryl also feels so guilty she can't take it and runs off crying to the bathroom. Kim perfectly puts both of them in such awkward, shameful spots that they can't possibly challenge Jimmy anymore.
Yep. No,
it was the perfect lie,
lawyer
perfectly presented, and perfectly evil.
Yeah, no, I felt so bad. I was like, oh, okay, that just happened.
I don't think. Oh, go ahead.
I was saying, I don't even. Well, obviously, she didn't even expect to say that. It hit her. She's like, I know how to fix the situation, almost. You know.
I think she did.
Oh,
I
you
think
think
she'd
so?
been playing
Okay.
this out in her mind. I don't think she planned on saying it. I think she was hoping she wouldn't have
Oh,
to.
okay.
But I think she'd already put this together in her mind. She's smart, just like Jimmy. They
Oh
know
yeah.
how to play people. They know how to read scenarios. They know how to plan ahead. I think it's
True.
part of why she ends up leaving him because she realizes what a terrible thing that she did, and she doesn't want to do it. And Jimmy brings it out in her.
Mm,
I
yeah.
think that lie and the fact that she told it and how well she told it and how well it worked, that combined with when they come downstairs after all this, Jimmy's like, okay, we made it through it, like now it's time to start healing. He isn't really feeling as terrible about this as she is.
Hmm.
And I think that's what makes her realize they can't continue this relationship.
That makes sense.
They're gonna keep doing terrible things, and Jimmy's gonna plow right through it like it's nothing, and he's gonna drag her along, and she can't even blame him too much because he didn't tell her to make that lie up. She did it on her own, and
Hmm.
she knows she'll keep doing it as long as she's hanging out with Jimmy. And they're both at fault. She's not trying to blame him.
Yeah, yeah.
She just knows how it's gonna go. She knows when she's with him, she does these terrible things. She doesn't want to do these terrible things. She's got to get away from him.
And
And
obviously
that kiss she gave him there was a goodbye kiss.
yes, yes. Which goes into the next scene. The apartment scene. I actually forgot they have that goodbye kiss in the garage. Is the scene that you're talking about? That she leaves him like, you know, it's like this goes back to the title, fun and games. It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. But she has so much fun doing this, and it's just she knows, this is just not right. Like you're saying, pretty much everything you just said.
So real quick before we get to this, I wanted to make one more comment about the funeral service
Yeah.
moment. And then you also did skip one, or there's not a whole lot to talk about,
Yeah.
but you skipped the scene with her in court with her client and
Yes. You're right. I'm
and all
sorry.
that. But
Yes, because that was
I wanted to
before
ask,
actually this scene, right? The court scene.
yeah, she goes from home after that, and she's waiting for Jimmy to show up. He catches wind of it. I'm sure it's like big news around the courthouse or whatever. But before that, real quick, I wanted to ask, what did you think? I feel like we say over and over again, everything in there is there for a reason.
Yeah.
And there was one shot that I was like, what was that about? One thing I couldn't quite figure. I've started to come up with some thoughts now. But when they were approaching Cheryl and Cliff,
Yeah.
to have that confrontation, they set their glasses of water down on a
I noticed
ledge, and the camera kind of focused in on it. What was that all about? Do you have any thoughts on that?
that. This is just like the idea I got from when that scene was happening, that they're ready, like Jimmy was ready to, I don't want to say neutralize, but like water it down a little bit. The confrontation, like he wasn't there to hurt her. He wasn't there to hurt Cliff.
Yeah.
Like he didn't know how Kim was going to react. I felt, like he has an idea probably, but he also almost is scared, to see maybe to see what's going to come out of her in this situation, Kim. And I think he was preparing for it. So
my thought was that maybe they're leaving their clear conscience behind.
I like
gas
that.
And clear water, and they left it behind to go have this moment. So I thought maybe also that they're like that where they set the glass down was kind of like a small surface area, so it was kind of on the edge, and they're on the edge. Maybe both those, maybe none of those. I also like your idea, like it's kind of like, except that it makes more sense for Jimmy than Kim. The idea that he's it's not quite the right phrasing. He's gonna water down what he says, but he's not trying to hurt them. So he's trying to the heat and the thickness and the truth of it all is really tough and dark, and like watering that out, thinning it out. But Kim is the opposite. So what she ends up doing anyway was sort of the opposite.
Exactly.
Anyway, I just felt like that was kind of like the Gus scene. The Gus scene seemed a little odd and out of place, especially if you don't know to look for everything they're doing and it has meaning behind it. And that scene also took like, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes or something, so it definitely was bigger, more memorable and meaningful. But they still focused in on setting those glasses down for a reason. They didn't have to do that, you
Yeah,
know. So I wanted to take a second to think about why it might have been. I don't know. We got a couple little ideas. So.
yeah. I guess anything else about the funeral stuff?
I don't think so.
Okay. We did say we did
sorry. I
skip.
guess there is. I do want
Yeah.
to point out when Jimmy and Kim were up there trying to like present themselves to Cliff and Cheryl.
No?
There were yellow lights just blazing right behind their heads for both of them. The conflict, the
Yeah.
struggle. Yeah.
That's good. So the course, actually, I think this was after. Oh, according to my notes. But yeah, Kim is not prosecuting, defending, representing this gentleman, and she goes up to the judge and she says, "I can no longer represent this person, and I got the paperwork to get a new lawyer, basically." And he's like, "Why? You came out here, you wanted me here, so now why are you basically throwing this, making my life hard?" And she won't say it, at least up, for like a couple of moments, because they go back and forth.
It's like she wants a continuance, and you're like, wait, this is a special trial just for your motion. She's like, I know, but I'm gonna drop that motion, and we're gonna get him a different lawyer. You're gonna get him a different lawyer. Why? And he's like, approach the bench, and eventually he's like gonna make her do it. He's not, usually these types of requests, the judge's like, okay, fine, we'll see you tomorrow. But he's pushing, and she's like, okay, if you really want to know.
And
I'm
she
not
says,
even a lawyer anymore.
Yeah,
I
she's like,
resigned from the bar. Yeah.
I physically can't do this because I'm not a lawyer. Which is a very neat way of it's like a storytelling, of telling a reason why, well, of telling us that she's not a lawyer anymore. They could have done this multiple ways, but they chose to do it this way. So
it's not just that they're telling us she's not a lawyer anymore. It's that she's definitely not a lawyer anymore and can't go back on it.
Exactly.
She's already submitted the paperwork.
Resigned. Yeah.
She's already given up this case. She's ticked off this judge. She can't like change her mind and go back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which is what Jimmy wants. You know what I mean? And I think that's the reason she did it this way. She needed to keep herself from having the ability to change her mind because she knew Jimmy had the capacity to change her mind. She knew that Jimmy would try and would probably even succeed. And she had to keep it from being an option.
Yeah, that's true. And I forget, because that leads into the next scene where, she tells him that she resigned, or she's no longer a lawyer, and he's mad. He doesn't want this for her, because he knows that she loves this. And like you said, he fights for it, and then he like goes into the room and realizes she just packed everything, and he like has that realization. He may have had the realization, but it's pretty much like finalized. He's like, no, you're leaving me.
I think that's part of why he was so frantic and scared about her quitting law, because I think he knew that meant she was quitting him too.
Yep.
There's no way she's gonna quit her job as a lawyer and then just hang out with him in this apartment where Howard was murdered. You know what I mean? I think he realizes more than just her quitting law, that she's leaving this life.
Yep. And and we expected this. Like that was like a pretty big prediction that she was going to leave. Not get killed off or anything, but just leave.
Of the different things that were on the table, like maybe she's killed, maybe she's
arrested,
arrested, and maybe she's in jail. Yeah, maybe she's working for Gus or the cartel. Maybe she's vacuumed away. Maybe she just left town to get away from the danger and from Jimmy, and maybe he drove her away or something. And I feel like we had like eliminated vacuum. We did not think it was very likely at all that she was going to be killed or vacuumed. I thought jail was a decent possibility.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the higher ones.
And I thought that still in town, mixed up in Jimmy's world, whether it's in the crime side or pro bono cases, I thought those were possibilities too. But just for one reason or another, leaving town without necessarily being under witness protection or any sort of danger, but just leaving to get away from the potential of danger, I thought was also
Yeah.
a good possibility. And it seems like this one happened is almost like, now that it's happened, it seems like the most obvious one. It seems
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, of course that's what's gonna,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
we have a little extra perspective seeing, just thinking about the idea of how they're gonna go through the next day at work. The fact that they couldn't even spend the night in their own home the next
Mm-hmm.
night, those are the clue, kind of like I said in the beginning. Aside from Kim walking toward the exit in that montage, it's another good clue that they spent the night in a hotel, that they can't stay in this apartment. And if they're going to upheaval their lives out of this apartment, well, what other kind of upheavals are they going to have?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we know eventually Jimmy is ending up in this big mansion and Kim doesn't seem to be there. Through the course of the episode, I didn't quite piece it together. But once you're through it, you're like, oh yeah, of course, this is exactly what they were setting up.
Yep.
This is the thing that makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I like how they end it. They end it on the back of Jimmy's head. Like you have like this, like I think it like pans over to his head, if I'm correct. And then the next scene is a flash forward.
He's kind of looking into an empty room. He's kind of like looking down through the apartment into the empty. Now we know that Kim is in there, but even okay, fine. He's not looking into an empty room. He's looking to the room where Kim is packing to leave.
Exactly.
It's same meaning comes from that imagery. Right?
And this kind of goes back to, I feel like the flash forward at least comes back to how Saul just needs to recreate himself. He's like trying to recreate himself because like in the next scene he's the Saul we know of Saul. He's some mess, it feels like.
Saul.
Yep. But I guess before we get into flash forward, do we want to talk about anything else with Kim and Jimmy?
Oh, I can't think of a particular thing. At least not something that will probably end up coming up as we talk about the flash forward. I guess I'll say. Let me follow up on a statement I made earlier.
Yeah.
I said I think that's the last we're going to see of Mike, and I think Gus also, and I think Kim also.
I think we'll see Kim.
I realize I should add a caveat. I think this is where I'm coming from. I feel like this episode tied up all the storylines in the Better Call Saul timeline.
Yes.
Like last episode, we literally saw the convergence
of
the cartel and the law. Howard and Lalo literally buried. Right, like that's it for those plot lines, and I think that they're doing the same thing in this episode. They're tying it up. We're seeing Gus is going to continue on his quest for revenge.
Yep.
We're seeing Mike is going to continue on, deceiving himself about his morality, following Gus's lead on his quest for revenge. And we see Kim removing herself from this scenario that no one else has been able to do in all of these Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul timelines. Saul got out without being killed or put in jail. And then so now we're going to see
thing.
So, go ahead.
Duty Swaz says, do you think there's a potential for her to still be involved and there to be a different fate for her in the future?
Well, in the far future, maybe, but not in the Breaking Bad timeline. I don't think she's going to be in a Breaking Bad timeline.
I think you're right, too.
What I was about to say is, I think we're kind of done with these characters. I think just because we know from like interviews and marketing and stuff that's out there, we know there's going to be some Jesse and Walt stuff,
and it makes sense around now.
And so right, and so I guess Mike might be mixed in with that. That makes sense. I can see how we might get Mike
maybe even Gus
in one of those scenes.
Yeah,
but I think we're done with their storylines
in the past now.
I guess I'm gonna clarify. This final scene with Saul, I don't think is a flash forward. I think that's where we are now.
Oh, when I say flash forward, I meant like they push forward to the new timeline. Yeah.
Right. Through the course of the season, we've gotten flashbacks and flash forwards, but I don't think this is a flash forward. I think this is a jump in the timeline.
Yeah.
And if we see Walter, or I guess Walter Jesse, but Gus or Mike, it's going to be in this new timeline. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see them at all.
Yeah.
Kim, I think if we see, it's going to be in the Gene timeline.
Yeah.
I can see somehow something with Kim being tied back together in the Gene timeline. But I don't expect her to be mixed up in the Breaking Bad world at all. I think that, I mean, I was kind of holding out for that. That was sort of what I expected through most of the, the past couple seasons. That's kind of where I thought things were going. It was that she was going to be behind the scenes working with Jimmy and or Gus and or but we just never happened to see it. But at this point, the where they're presenting to us, I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance she's a lawyer in another state. Like you can resign from a bar in one state, but then pass the bar in another state. She might continue to be a lawyer. She might open an orphanage. She might just be helping her mom. I can see, but I don't. It seems to me like she is trying to start a new life, and I think she's going to remove herself from Albuquerque, maybe remove herself from the law, remove herself from Jimmy. I don't see her getting in deeper with the cartel. I don't see that being where this goes.
So what point do you think they're at? I was trying to figure this out, like, with the present time now of Saul. Is this before he meets Jesse and Walter? I thought that this was going to be the scene right before he meets Walter, but it's not, because it's not the same outfit. I actually checked that. Because I thought that, when Saul walks into his office and he's like fixed, he has like this yellow shirt with I can't remember his tie color, but he has distinctly a yellow shirt on him. I thought he was setting up.
I think it's like a greenish tinted yellow shirt and kind of an orangish tie that might have like yellow stripes or something, but it's definitely gaudy and colorful.
Yeah,
and
but I thought
blue.
that he was the next shot was going to be Walter walking into it, like as in Breaking Bad. Like this is the first time that Walter saw him. I thought they were setting that up, but I'm wrong, because like I said, I actually watched Breaking Bad to see when Walter first walks into that office, and it's not the same color.
There's a little bit of conflicting information. I think you are right about that, but I think that Saul was wearing that same outfit the first time we saw him. Not the first time he saw Walt, but when he saw Badger. Badger had gotten arrested.
I thought about that, actually. I thought about, I'm like, what if there's another time point that, Walter may have met, or somebody else may have met, or something like that, and he had that color? But that obviously takes further research. I didn't. Yeah.
Saul was even on the phone, or on the Bluetooth with Francesca, talking about a public masturbator, which he was talking about here too.
Okay. So it was okay.
However, that's why I started off saying there's some conflicting bits of information.
Yeah.
That was taking place in approximately 2008. That moment in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
This moment in Better Call Saul, though, when he pulls his car up, the license plate says 2005.
Oh, interesting. So, yes, we are talking about the suit in the last scene that was shot in this episode. Duddy is asking about that. I missed this. You were talking about the suit in the last scene. But no, I didn't catch that it was 2005. Wait, so this is 3 years prior to Breaking Bad?
Yeah, maybe only 2 years. I don't exactly know. Like different states use their license plates differently.
That's true.
And it might have changed in the past 15 years. However, New Mexico does it now might not be the same it was then. I expect the writers of the show, since they get every detail so freaking accurate and close, and everything is so meaningful and careful, I expect that they accounted for it properly. Remember, he sticks the handicap, he parks in a handicap spot, and he puts a handicap thing on his thing. That said 2008. Which again, maybe there's some conflict. But here's the thing. Those could be expiration dates. And the handicapped tag might last 3 years or 10 years or who knows. You know what I mean? I wish I could remember for sure, like on my own car, what the tag is. I don't know if they give you the tag when, or we gave you this tag in 2023 or 2022, and so it says 22 on it. And so maybe cops know that's good through 2023, but if in 2024 that's a 22 tag, all right, we're pulling you over. Or did they give you, when I get my tag in 2022, did they give me one that expires in 2023? And so it says 23 on it, and I'm good through 23. I'm not sure. And however it works in Colorado, I don't know if that's the same way it works in Arizona or New Mexico. And however it works in New Mexico, I don't know if it worked the same way 15 years ago as it works now. I don't know.
Yeah.
And how it works for a license plate, I don't know if that's how it works for the handicap tag. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't. Maybe someone out there knows these things. I don't know if there's some resident of New Mexico that's been living there for 20 years and knows these details. It's also handicapped.
Yeah.
Maybe you can Google all this. I haven't researched it that deep. I just know those are the different dates that they put
Okay.
on the screen for us. So,
And it makes
how
sense
to
that
make that jive with his suit or the theme of Badger,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah, I'm assuming that at least probably next episode we're gonna get a Jesse and Walter, and I feel like they may even be doing time jumps or time, like there could be continuing, like maybe I'm wrong and this is all gonna be taking place in the next 2 episodes or 3 episodes, this timeline until we get Gene. But I feel like they're gonna bounce around to different points that are significant in Breaking Bad that we never got to see. That's my guess. I don't know if that's right. So like maybe an important conversation with Walt and him happened that we never got to see in Breaking Bad. May happen in the next episode or 2 that may be significant to the Gene storyline in the long run. I actually, well, I guess this is more getting to the predictability. But what do you think? I was trying to figure out what the heck they're going to do in these next couple of episodes.
I mean, I have been hoping, not quite the same as expecting, but almost expecting and definitely hoping to get multiple Gene episodes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It's still possible for that to happen. We have 4 episodes left, so maybe we get 2 episodes in a Breaking Bad timeline and 2 in the Gene timeline.
Yeah, I thought about that.
I think that's possible. And that could be done without a lot of jumping around. Like next episode could pick up pretty much where it is, and then just go through the next few days of Saul's life, which could include sorry, my phone just keeps going off. Could pick up on the next few days of Saul's life, and might include Jesse and Walt, although it doesn't seem like they're quite in that Breaking Bad timeline yet. But Jesse and Walt don't necessarily have to be working together yet, or we could get a Jesse scene. Jesse gets in trouble. Jesse brought Walt to Saul. Jesse knew who Saul was, so maybe we get a scene with Jesse. Jesse, did I say it right? Jesse brought Walt to Saul.
Yeah.
So maybe we get a scene with Jesse and Saul, and that's
situation,
learning how they know about each other in the first place. And then maybe next episode, and so we could go through some time of Saul being Saul. And incorporate Jesse. Then maybe we get a time jump to a couple years later with Walt, and maybe we see some other sides of things, like when Walt came. We were mostly seeing things from Walt's perspective.
I was thinking that right before he got vacuumed. Maybe
we start seeing things from Saul's perspective.
And that's why I was thinking. Like, I feel like there's at least 2 distinct times that they may need to jump to for us to fully understand what is going on with Gene, because like obviously they could tell like a story in an episode of like something that randomly happened, but why are they doing it? And I feel like there has to be a point to it.
Exactly. I can't think of what specific story they need to tell us about in the Breaking Bad timeline. I can't think about what's there that we need to learn it. I mean, I can think of all kinds of things they could do, and I'll be happily surprised. I trust them, but I can't think of. I don't feel like Breaking Bad ended with all these hanging storylines that no one understands, and now this is their chance to resolve it. Also, I feel like they tied everything up pretty well.
I personally don't know why Gene 100% left. Like, there's an idea, obviously he was caught up in the cartel and all that. But some major players were dead, and I feel like there may be another side to it that we don't know, and I feel like that could be told. Like you said, we were focusing on Walter, but we weren't focusing on Saul. Because he's scared that people in Gene's storyline are following him or something like that. He was almost like willing to like leave the Cinnamon Bun, whatever that like area he's at, Nebraska. Why?
There's all kinds of people that could be after him. Think of all the different people all the money he's embezzled, all the different criminal clients he's had, all the people that he's lied to or stolen from. The list of people that would have something against him is huge. I mean, he was mixed up in multiple murders toward the end there. Like, Walt killed like Walt, through Saul, arranged for 9 people in jail to be murdered.
Yeah,
They're
this is like
dealing
stuff
with gang members.
I can't
Like
remember. I remember that. I just don't remember Saul being part of that. You know,
he wasn't necessarily in charge of it, but he was mixed up in it. Someone who's trying to figure it out is gonna know, in the same way that Lalo went after Saul.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like Saul didn't know that Nacho did anything to Lalo, but Lalo still went after him. He's connected to this stuff, and there are dangerous people who know we have these connections. Even if he didn't actually do any of these bad things, there are dangerous people who think he might have or might know who did. If you remember, Walt at the end, he's still on this mission to get revenge on that white power gang that kind of that kidnapped Jesse, all that stuff, all those people.
Yeah, I remember that.
Saul leaves, all those guys are still around with guns, dealing drugs, trying to get more power. You know what I mean? Like Walt ends up taking them out, but at the point that Saul leaves, they're not taken out yet, and he might not know that they're taken out at this point. I don't know how much he's keeping up with the news or how much that was on the news.
Right.
And even if they are, it still doesn't mean there aren't other people he's worried about. He might still be worried about Lalo, right? Like, there's this a laundry list of criminals that Saul should be worried about.
Yeah.
Of all sorts, ones that we've seen and haven't, ones that he may or may not should be afraid of. There's reasons you can understand why he would be. And none of that counts the police. The police know Walt was one of the biggest drug dealers in history. And this was his lawyer. And now the lawyer's gone. You don't think the police want to question him? You don't think they want to try to track the money or when the last time they met was or see what records they have or maybe Skyler could be implicated. There's a million reasons for a million people to be after Gene.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Huel went missing. That was another thing that happened at the end. Hank got Huel.
Yeah.
The last time we saw Huel, who was Saul's bodyguard, Hank had taken him in. He didn't even officially arrest him. Hank was kind of like operating off the books. He just knew he had to figure something out and was breaking rules and took Huel in without officially arresting him or giving him rights or telling the truth. He just had him in this room and then left. And then, Hank left Huel in his room, thinking that he was found out and people might be after him. And then Hank left and got killed in the desert. And now Saul's like, hey, well, my bodyguard's missing. Do you think when you're a lawyer mixed up in a cartel and your bodyguard gets missing, that's not a reason to be afraid?
Right.
Like, even if Huel didn't do anything, didn't tell anyone, Saul doesn't know that. All he knows is his bodyguard's missing.
Right.
He's getting out of town.
Makes sense.
And so I can see all the reasons why Gene is afraid. I think that part of what we're going to see is something go down with this Jeff character that seems to have ID'd Saul. They presented that guy as being kind of menacing.
Yeah.
There seemed to be a threat behind what he was doing. And whether that threat was he's working for some agent in the cartel and he's going to tell them and they're going to come assassinate you, or hey, there's a reward out for you, I'm going to get that reward money, I'm going to tell the cops, or hey, if you don't do what I want, then I'm going to tell the cartel or call the cops. This Jeff character could play a lot of angles and we don't know which one it's going to be. Maybe he's just like a guy who liked his commercials and there's nothing bad. I just don't think that's the case. Right? And so it seemed like Saul was ready to skip town.
Yeah.
He calls the vacuum guy up. He dug through his positions and found these diamonds. And it seemed like, but in the middle of the phone call, I think what he realized is I skipped town and then this just happens again in another year or 5 years or whatever. I don't want to have to keep running. I don't want to have to be looking over my shoulder. I'm going to take care of this myself. He says something to the effect of, I'll take care of it myself.
Yeah.
Now, whether that means he's just going to take care of this issue with this guy and try to move on because he doesn't want to give all his money to the vacuum guy, or because he thinks maybe he's got something figured out. Maybe, the con artist brain clicked and he's like, he's got a read on this guy and what he's looking for, how to handle him. Or maybe he made some bigger decision to turn himself in. Maybe he's going to turn himself in. Did we talk about this last time about that trailer with the wanted sign?
I was thinking about that, yeah.
Yeah, maybe he's going to turn himself in and find some way to make sure Kim gets the reward money. So, something like that. I could see it going a few different ways. But the fact that they were in the approximately Breaking Bad timeline now, and I can't think of what key important story they need to tell is. It's hard for them to start too much of a new
Arc.
storyline if they
Yeah.
only have 4 episodes left. And we're gonna give some time to Gene. Like, I don't know. I don't know if they're gonna start something new with Breaking Bad and show us a bunch of behind the scenes stuff we never knew and drag that out for 3 episodes and then only give 1 episode or less of Gene, or if we're just gonna get 1 episode of Breaking Bad.
Mhm.
Or hardly even a full episode of Breaking Bad, and most of the rest is going to have all. Because I can see multiple episodes worth of material coming for Gene, especially if part of it is getting Kim back, especially part of it is cartel people coming after Gene. I don't know. There's a lot. I feel like if I throw enough darts, I'll hit something. So I'm not going to be too proud of myself for making 18 guesses and one of them is right. So,
one thing I want to talk about is, did you hear the news about the person who plays Saul, Bob something? I never could get his last name right.
Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah, had a heart attack in this episode.
Yeah.
Oh well, in real life, he had a heart attack.
I don't know if it was this episode. I think it might be
this episode.
There was some confusion there. Just so you know, it might be. I'm not going to argue, but
Yeah.
I know that there was some confusion about one person posted something, and another person posted something, or someone posted something, and someone said something about in this episode is where Bob had a heart attack, but they said that before 1 episode, but they might not have realized what was airing next when they said it. See what I'm saying? I think there's some confusion about when exactly it was.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
It easily might have been this one, but just warning you, there might be some confusion. It might have been the one prior.
Right. Well, whatever the case, so he did have a heart attack on set, and they had to whatever they filmed, they had to put that on hold and wait like 5 weeks, and then when he came back, he had to work like shorter shifts, which were like 12-hour shifts, if I'm correct. Which that seems short, but it's still long. Maybe it was 8, but it was definitely to a normal person like a full day.
Yeah.
And they like monitored him and all that, but glad he didn't die on set. That would have, I don't even know what that would have done.
Yeah.
Because no one in general likes when an actor dies in general, but like also like that could mess up how they tell a story, because they're like, well, how do we finish the rest of this? Do we CGI it?
Yeah.
So I'm glad he's fine.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I thought that was just interesting hearing that news. Whether I guess if it was last episode or this episode or next episode.
Yeah, I'll see if I can do some research and find out for sure.
Yeah, I read something and they made it sound like it was this episode, and he's like, I remember the scene. I'm obviously remember the scene, but like, there's a chance you could even catch the actual scene itself.
Because there will be like a before and after of like his hair and makeup and everything.
Yeah. My guess is, because it's like the last couple scenes, especially this last episode, there's like a lot of stressful situations going on, like that he had to act. And I don't know if one of those pushed over. It's interesting, like heart attacks in general, But
the episode before had him tied up in a chair, knocked down to the ground. Like, that's
that's a good point.
And physical that was happening there. So.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
I thought when before the season even came out, we knew there was a delay because he'd had a heart attack. And then as the season was playing out, I thought for sure it was the boxing episode, but they clarified, nope, it wasn't that. I'm like, well, okay.
That would, pump your heart and.
Yeah.
I mean, it's physical. I was honestly thinking it was like between. Well, honestly, the scene where he gets frantic with Kim at the end could have been potential, but it made it sound like it was a little bit earlier in the episode. I don't know, like how I was reading it, like they filmed like 1/3 of it or something like that. I'm not, like I said, that. Anyways, it's just interesting.
The way I guess there is one other, or a couple other. There are a couple other factors I've considered when you're projecting forward, trying to make predictions.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I talked about the Kettlemans last time.
You did. You talked about the Kettlemans and Tulo. Right. Tuco. Sorry.
Tuco?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right. So then, if I talked to them last time, I won't bring them up. But they are like people who potentially could come back into play.
Yeah. Yeah. Get to
I
see
feel
their.
like it's less likely now. Like they just showed us Saul has the Statue of Liberty. They didn't show us how he got it. He just has it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes me think. All right, we're probably not seeing a Kettleman's after all. And apparently the actor that played Tuco
Uh,
doesn't like playing Tuco. He the role is too tough and too dark, and he's not excited. Now that doesn't mean he won't do it,
yeah.
but man, a little bit of evidence that it's less like kind of like the actor that plays the vacuum guy,
Uh,
Ed, has died.
yeah.
And so that doesn't mean he can't possibly be part of the storyline, but it does make it a little less likely. If the
Yeah.
actor that plays Tuco doesn't like it, that makes it a little less likely for Tuco to come into play. So.
Right. It's kind of funny. Yeah. Like if you, like actors like Joffrey and Ramsey. Ramsey's a little different because I feel like people still liked him no matter what. But like if you just play like this like hated character that people just like will go up to and like, "F you," like you're like, I was acting a role, dude. I'm sorry, I'm not really like that. So I can see that, like he may like to play a little bit more likable characters or something like that.
Yeah. He might want to play a character he's more excited about his mom or his wife or whatever watching.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Hey, watch me play this crazy psychopath murderer.
Yeah, who
I don't know,
smokes
honey,
up
can we watch
everything.
something else?
So yeah, I guess is there anything else? Because I think we're about wrapping it up.
Let me think. I don't think I have anything else. Yeah. We covered a lot. I thought it was a great episode, and
no, a lot of not much action, but a lot of drama, a lot of dialogue, and in a way resolution. Kind of like
I feel like
I keep feeling like they're resolving stuff, and I guess I'm just kind of expecting that in a lot of ways in the next couple of episodes too. Like it's not like you said, they're gonna probably not start something that doesn't make any sense that they can't wrap up. They're probably just resolving unanswered questions, probably, theories or whatever. They're like, we'll tell you what really this was about.
Yeah, part of me feels like they've resolved everything.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that too.
Resolved, so it makes me wonder. Maybe they will start up a new conflict. But another me thinks that they don't have enough time to start up and resolve a new conflict. But maybe I'm underestimating how much they can get done in these 2 episodes.
And we there may be more to the Gene thing than we realize. Like just overall, that they need to let us know, before they resolve it.
Let me think. That I did just have another thought. One last thought flashed in my head, and then it went right back out again. Something about Kim. Something about.
Well, you did say that you don't think. There's going to be Mike or Gus or at least Kim, at least until the end. Like I feel like she will come back and Jean, or at least have a. They didn't introduce her just to not use her if she's still alive. Like I feel like she's going to come back in Jean in some way or another.
One thing they could do that I feel like is unlikely simply because we haven't heard anything about the casting of the actors, but they could give us some more Skylar. We could see, some of the fallout of what happened to Skylar and her son after Walt left.
I actually thought when you brought up the bodyguard, what's his name?
Huel. Yeah, we could see
that they're going to actually resolve that. Tell you exactly what happened to him. That was
probably the most dangling, unfinished, borderline cliffhanger of anything I can think of. Last we saw him, he's just sitting in a room waiting for Hank to come back.
It's funny because I remember you said it, and you're like, he died. I'm like, I don't remember him dying. And then I had to think, I'm like, wait, did he die? I couldn't remember. Because I forgot that he gets wrapped up, and then pieces started flashing back. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. He was in the safe house. But yeah, you're right. Maybe Francesca.
I can't remember when it was early when we started doing this. I thought that he had died. I can't remember if I clarified or corrected myself, but yeah.
Oh wait, you said that Francesca was supposed to get a phone call at some point,
right? That is another. When Saul leaves town, he tells her he doesn't say it, but we just know what his birthday is. He gives her a date that is his birthday. She's supposed to be at some location, a payphone or something, to get a phone call at 3 p.m. In fact, that I'm glad you brought that up because that is something that does make sense. Maybe for Kim to be calling him.
Yes.
Maybe they have an arrangement to once a year to call. That was one thing that made me think that jail was less likely. If
Yeah.
they're trying to be discreet about this phone call, her calling him on his birthday from jail is kind of suspicious, right?
Yes.
But if she's not in jail, if she just moved to another town, oh man, what if she? You remember that movie Castaway? Did you ever see Castaway with Tom Hanks?
Yeah, where he goes onto an island and he has Wilson, the best character in the world, who's not a character at all.
He like works for FedEx or something, and a plane crashes, and he's in love and married or engaged, maybe to be married.
Something like that. Yeah.
Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen Castaway, I'm about to spoil it. So one, it's a good movie. You should watch it. But two, if you haven't seen it, plan on watching it, and don't want it spoiled, turn this off. If you remember, he's stranded out there for I think years. I think 2 or 5.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
years, and eventually finds his way off and comes back home. And what's been keeping him going is his love for Helen Hunt.
Right.
But we
on.
don't know this, but we've seen everything through his eyes. But we learn that and it makes sense. She thought he was dead. His plane crashed. Years went by. What is she supposed to think? And she got married and had kids. And now here he comes back. He still has this passionate love for her. On some level, she might too. But is she supposed to leave her husband and her kids for this guy that's been missing for 5 years?
Right.
What if Kim has been married and has new kids?
That's very plausible. Yeah.
Started a new business, met a new guy, fell in love, had kids. And now Gene decides he needs to find her again. He needs to confess his love and make the relationship work and finds her, but she's married. I don't know if it's realistic for him to show up at her doorstep. I don't know if it's realistic for him to find her and not know that she's already married with kids. Does that make sense? Whatever kind of investigation would lead him to her would also lead him to know what her life is. But again, we might see that and it might still be tragic. He might like pull up in front of the house and look and see her in the yard and then just pull away and it ends like that or something. I don't know.
What happens if, if we see a present time? So we just assume, this is a prediction in the past that it's not true, but like you thought that she was in the back scenes, Kim and Breaking Bad. But what happens if during Breaking Bad they do a scene of her? So not in Gene's storyline or timeline, but just whatever Breaking Bad timeline.
Same time period, but not mixed up with those characters.
Exactly. We have like a scene or episode or half
California.
Yeah. I guess it's possible. I don't.
It's possible. Yeah.
Because that's like, even though she left and all that, like I said, we assume she's gonna get the Gene, be part of Gene's storyline. But like, I don't know. I guess I see people wanting see more of her.
Yeah.
What happened to her after that? That situation. But
I would like to see more of Kim, and I expect to see more of her than I do of Gus or Mike or most any of the other characters. But it also occurs to me that Francesca is another person.
I just thought about that.
Earlier, I said earlier that I think Kim is the one person in all these stories who's mixed up with Saul, who gets out of it without being killed or going to jail. We don't see her get arrested if she does. It makes sense that she might get arrested. Yeah. She would certainly be questioned, and she might also be in trouble. The same people who might want to hunt Jimmy down because he would know something about something might feel the same way about Francesca. I can see a storyline coming from that. I don't know if I expect that necessarily, but it is another character that could get more resolution.
This is like a little bit far-fetched, but imagine if Kim met with Jesse. Gene's storyline time, but Jesse's still alive.
Yeah, I think
it's far-fetched, I think, but like
what would cause them to meet, and B, what would
she's in a different state. So imagine if she was in the same state as Jesse, wherever Jesse is. Jesse's in Alaska, if I'm correct, but which wouldn't make any sense that she would be in Alaska. But I don't know,
But even if Jesse wasn't in Alaska after all, or she was, okay, they meet. Then what? So what? How does that?
Oh yeah. That's why I was like. That's more like
what lesson do we learn? What? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jesse does know who Saul is, but other than that.
Okay, so what? How does he know who Kim is? How does Kim know who Jesse is?
Oh,
Why would
I
they?
assume like
What
they
do they
just run
talk
it.
about? Maybe Kim saw Jesse in the news and recognized him
Yeah,
and
yeah,
walked up to him and said, "Hey, you know Saul Goodman? I used to be married to him." Okay, so now what do they talk about?
yeah.
Where does it go from there? How does that turn into a plot?
It doesn't. It doesn't really. That's why I was like, it's far-fetched. Unless like she sparks somehow. Like I want to find Saul to Jesse.
Yep, yep. Okay,
That's the only thing that makes sense.
That could
But
be, yeah.
yeah. Like I said, I highly doubt it. That just it seems a little
Jesse could
far-fetched.
point her to the vacuum guy, then
Yeah.
the vacuum guy could point her to Gene.
Which I guess could lead
it.
to that guy you're talking about, the guy who got recast. Jeff, thank you.
Cab driver, yeah.
Like I said, seems a little far-fetched, but it's just outside of the box. You know, what's another way that because we just assume Jesse's going to be with in this timeline. I meant, like, you know, he's going to meet Saul and he's going to have a scene with Saul. But what's another way of using Jesse? That's another way I feel, potentially, at least. You know, just throwing it out there. But
one thing is interesting whenever we see Saul in Breaking Bad. Like, if you watch the original episodes of Breaking Bad, Saul typically is trying to encourage Walt and/or Jesse to make more meth. That's typically the interaction that they have. Saul's trying to find a way to keep them cooking, and I wonder if that might be part of what we see. But you know what it is that's motivating Saul to do that. If it's just money or greed, or if he's being pressured by Gus, or if he does something really dark in the background to Jesse that we don't realize. You know.
Yeah, that is interesting that he has that motivation, I guess, in Breaking Bad versus. Oh, I was like, he doesn't do money stuff, but no, he did the Howard thing to get money.
Yeah.
So
he on some level is definitely motivated by money.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm glad we brought this up, because I wanted to say that I think that's another interesting element of Saul's character that we see in this jump forward at the end of the episode. That I made this point before. I think I might not have said it on here, but I know I posted about it online.
Yeah.
I think, and my thoughts have evolved a little, but it's the same core. I think the reason, or a central reason, that Gene is so morose, the reason he's presented as such this defeated, empty, hollow person, is because as Saul, and even as Jimmy, kept himself busy. He always had some scam, some plan, some phone call, some client. He always had something going on, and he just would never allow himself a moment to think even about Chuck and his role in Chuck's death. And now he also would have the guilt over Howard, right? His role in Howard's death. I think as Saul, he keeps himself too busy to allow himself even an instant of self-reflection. Think about how we saw that final scene play out. Every moment of his time, when he goes to bed at night, he goes to bed with a sex worker, right?
Yep.
He can't allow himself to go to bed alone with his own thoughts. He needs to have a sex worker there to fall asleep with.
Yeah.
Instantly, first thing in the morning, turns on his Bluetooth, gets to work. In the shower, he's still talking to clients and Francesca.
Yes.
On the car ride, like, he won't allow his mind a moment to settle enough to reflect on what happened with Chuck or Howard or other failures in his life, other people that he's hurt. All of a sudden, is Gene? He's got nothing to do. He's sitting at home with nothing to do but reflect on the people he's hurt and the mistakes that he's made and the things that he's lost. Right?
And it makes sense why he would maybe turn himself in if he's thinking about it all the time.
It makes sense why he's so depressed. It might make sense why he passed out that one episode. It seemed kind of out of nowhere, but I can imagine he might have just started to be overwhelmed with self-reflection, with guilt, with fear. And it might be a reason why he's excited about a new challenge. This Jeff guy, he's like, wait a minute, I'll take care of it myself. That'll distract my mind from all these bad things that I've done. This will give me something to do, work with, you know? a new scam to run.
Imagine if
Might
it's
end up getting him
nothing.
killed. Might end up getting him arrested. Might,
It's interesting
I
that
can
you.
see this spinning into a
Yeah,
multiple episode arc.
I just say it's interesting that you bring that up because imagine if David is, or not David, sorry, Jeff is almost like a distraction for us. We think it's something big, but it's really not. It's just for Gene or him to get himself back in, and working his mind.
Yeah,
And he's
maybe
just
it's not going to be a central plot point. Maybe it'll be over really quick, but it'll spark new things.
One way to find that out is if Jeff was wearing green, possibly,
or red,
or red.
blue.
Yeah.
Like if we
it's a
see
facade
Jeff
or something
in color and he has a blue shirt on, we're like, oh, Saul's got nothing to worry about.
Yep.
But if he's wearing red and green stripes, like, oh, he's definitely pretending to be something he's not and bringing some heat with him.
So yeah, that's like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that should wrap it up.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for watching. Follow Sean on Dancing Sean on YouTube. I'll have a link for it on my YouTube when I post this to YouTube. Thank you all for watching.
Put up a link to the video I made also.
Yeah, I'll do that too. Awesome. But anyways, we'll see you next week. We'll go over episode 10, season 6. Thank you all, and have a good night.